So we took 2 mission trips, listen up, and we sent a team to India and a team went to Detroit. So the purpose for tonight, you may be thinking, well, I didn't go, so how does this relate to me? Well, it does relate to you, and I'm gonna tie it in at the end. So those that went to Detroit, we got to meet a lady, and I think what she's doing is pretty unique. And it will tie into everyone has a mission that's in this room in some way, shape, or form. And so we want to spend some time asking them some questions, all right? And so if you went to Detroit, raise your hand. All right, that's that side. That works out really, really well. If you went to India, raise your hand. That would be this half, all right? So that kind of makes it connection. So here's the first question, all right? And it's for any one of you that want to answer, okay? We'll put the microphone here and then you can pass it where it needs to go. Okay? What led you to go to Detroit, or what led you to go to India?
Okay, I guess I'll go for it. So what led me to India was, first off, just the experience that I could get from it. Like, not only seeing a new culture and seeing new people, but also just being able to go with my grandma and experience that with her, and just a great team was pretty awesome.
Okay. Some of you might know me, but I grew up on the mission field, and so a few years ago we actually came off of it and moved back here. And so both my sister and I were sitting around and we're like, we need to get back into this. Like, we missed going on mission trips, so we're like, we need to get back onto the mission field. And so India and Detroit were our 2 options, and I was like, I'm not ready for India yet. That's a little far, so let's do Detroit. So that's why I did it.
Okay.
Anyone else got an answer?
It's good.
Yes or no? No.
I'll do it.
So my dad actually made like this whole thing with my whole family that he wanted to take all of us kids on a mission trip. And so my sister went to Jamaica way back, and he took Preston like 3 years ago, and then it was my turn. And so the opportunity just kind of arose, and then the Lord was like, oh yeah, this is gonna happen. And so I got funded, and it was like crazy, but
Okay.
So when I became a Christian, it was kind of like, that kind of thing where it's one and done at first, where I became a Christian and then I felt like that was it. But then a couple years back, a little bit before COVID, God really changed my heart. I was reading this book, and I really felt like he was speaking to me and asking me, like, maybe he wanted me to be a missionary. And so that was really, I wasn't sure if that was me or him. So that week, I prayed a lot, and God gave me a whole bunch of little confirmations. Like that Wednesday night, actually 2 people that went on a mission trip to India, because I was specifically feeling India. Before then, they actually came and talked about their trip, so that was really crazy. But then I wasn't able to go because COVID happened, so this has been my first opportunity to go. So.
Okay. I'll get you guys down there eventually. Don't worry. So I think one of the things that I heard a lot from you guys, and I heard from adults in general, was why would you want to go to Detroit? It's not safe, all right? And so was there ever a moment, in India too, right? Was there ever a moment that either team that you felt unsafe?
I have something to say. The only time I felt unsafe was when I was in the airport, because there's so many scary people there, and they all look like they want to hurt you. So, but otherwise, it was fine.
Okay. What about from Detroit?
Actually,
Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Go.
actually, in India, the people in India are like so nice.
so
Like,
nice.
if you just like wave to them, they'll just like wave back and smile. Like,
Yeah.
I did not expect that, but yeah.
Yeah.
So, one day, we got left the guys went to a mosque and left me and Megan alone by ourselves. So we actually went for a little walk because we had been at a gym and the gym had closed. So and we had no car and nowhere to go. So we went for a walk, a nice breezy stroll down to a little coffee shop. And at first it was like a little nerve-wracking because you don't know where you are. And I mean, I've heard bad things about Detroit, but we were outside of Detroit and didn't have any issues. And everyone was so sweet and so welcoming that I don't think it would have been a problem whatsoever. So I'm sure they were fine. They probably didn't even notice we were in Detroit.
Yeah. All right. So, Drew, I'm going to ask you this one. I'm going to make you answer it. So part of being on mission is flexibility. Oh. All right. And so what is something, what were you expecting and what got changed?
Well, I was expecting that we were going to play soccer with the little kids, but we ended up not doing that. And
Why? That's very important to fill that in. Why?
Because Detroit is pretty cold. So it snowed and we saw snow like each day.
So what did we do instead?
We toured some mosques and went inside a couple of mosques.
Yeah.
Not having hot water. But we did go to a place where we took showers and hanged out for a while to get cleaned up.
Okay.
I expected going to Detroit and I was going to be doing a lot of work, and because that's kind of my thing up to this point is I'm a worker, and so I got out there expecting to go out and use my hands, and we didn't do a whole lot of that, and so I had to kind of figure out that ministry for me can't just be about work. I have to really focus on the faith aspect and the relationship aspect of it. So that was cool.
Yeah. You don't have to. What about, because you've already answered some, what about the India team? What was something that happened in India that you had to be super flexible with, that changed maybe, that you weren't expecting?
Did y'all get hot water? We did.
Oh yeah, it was nice and hot. So the first day we planned to go to the lepers and then children's home.
I don't really remember. Oh, yeah. We kind of did a lot.
Yeah, so we did the lepers and then we were like, children's home. And then we got there and they're like, psych, we lied. And so we got the children's home, or we went to lepers for like an hour and a half, which was pretty cool. Then we did children's home. And then we went to see widows. And it was pretty cool because we walked in there and it's like, hey, how's it going, guys? And we just sat there and they talked. And then they're like, all right, so now we're going to wash your feet. And that was interesting because I'm not a big feet or dirt or just germs in general guy. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
Okay. So, what is something that you saw, or something that you did, or someone you spoke to that changed your opinion? And here's why I'm asking this question. For a lot of us, when we see someone that's Muslim, our mind instantly goes in one direction. And so when we were walking around the streets around Hamtramck, we stood out. Maybe be more specific. Stam stood out like a sore thumb. All right? And so, and I'm sure you guys in India, you stood out too. So what is something that you saw or experienced that changed your opinion or changed your view of something?
So we were at this, it was either Tuesday or Wednesday, and we were at this widow's colony. And so just to give you some perspective, we cannot communicate with any of them. Like, we learned like how to say hello, and like how to tell them they're beautiful. I personally forgot how to do that, but it's okay. We knew in the moment, so it was fine. Anyways, but we cannot communicate with them. And there was this one lady who I'd like gone up to, and I was like pointed to her feet, like, can I wash your feet? And I'm pretty sure that she was trying to tell me no, but I did not get that. And so I just washed her feet anyway. And it was weird to see like her expression change towards me, because I think that in the beginning, whenever we first like introduce ourselves to these women who have close to nothing, like we get to treat them like royalty, basically. I mean, that's really kind of dramatic, a big word for that, but we just get to treat them with kindness. And so it changed my perspective a lot on like whenever you see somebody and you know that like they have little to nothing, but they still have so much joy in every circumstance. And this lady, like, I'm pretty sure she did not want me to touch her feet or paint her nails or anything, but then I just did it, and she just changed her whole attitude towards me. And so it was crazy to experience like the difference of perspectives that we have towards each other, because I know that she did not want to see me, and I probably didn't really want to wash her feet either. But like that's what the servant heart that I needed to have was like. So yeah.
It's good. It's good. What is something or someone you saw or experienced that changed your view of something that you had previously?
So there's this one guy, and we called him Smiley because nobody could pronounce his name. And so we were painting, and some people thought it'd be funny to put paint on me. And so I had paint on me, and so we were walking, and Smiley's like, oh, you got paint on you? And it's like, yeah. And he's like, oh, let's go clean it up. And I'm like, okay. I expected him to get the hose or something, you know, like we do in Texas. No, he brought me in like the bathroom back, and there was this bucket and this water, and he just got down and he started scrubbing the soap, like the paint off my leg and my feet. And that was like, when we washed feet, we made like a dramatic thing about it, like where you go and it's like a ceremony type thing. But he just did it, and at the moment I didn't really think about it like that, but he like had the humility kind of and the love and the servant's heart to do that. And if I saw somebody in the US, I'd be like, oh, sucks for y'all. But that was just good to see. And like that's the humility that we should have.
Okay, so while we were in Hamtramck, Megan and I got to go to a women's only gym, and so we thought we were just going to have one workout class, and then we ended up having 3, so it was lots of fun.
For the record, I was really disappointed I couldn't go to the workout gym.
He was so disappointed, if you can tell. But we went to this gym, and so the building that the gym's in, it doesn't have any windows, and men aren't allowed in there. So it allows the women to come in and to take off all their coverings and their head coverings and face coverings and just be themselves. And so Megan and I were there just working out with them, just talking to them and like laughing with them. And we got to see like their face and their facial expressions and like just like seeing their whole personality, and like they're wearing clothes like normal clothes just like we are. And so it was really cool to like actually like see them underneath everything and get to know them. Because I think when we see them, we just kind of, I guess you would either like look at them, stare at them, whatever, but you're not super open to anything, because it's a lot harder when you don't see that face and like those facial expressions. But we got the opportunity to do that and to see like the human underneath everything. So I really enjoyed that and appreciated that.
One guy I remember, he was the assistant imam, which is like the pastor of a church, of a Muslim mosque. At the first mosque we went to, and I kind of had this idea that it was wrong, completely wrong. I was a horrible person for thinking this, but I assumed that all Muslim people were going to be very closed off and very self-centered and like not want to talk about their religion with anybody. They just wanted to keep it from, or not necessarily keep it from themselves, but just, you know, if anybody had a different viewpoint, they just push them away. But we went to this mosque, and we were just kind of hanging out in the back. And afterwards, he came up and he greeted us. And after they were finished praying, he came up and started talking. And it wasn't demeaning. It wasn't, you know, he was just wanting to have a regular conversation with us about, you know, what they believe, and we would tell him what we believed. And that was really cool to me because I assumed, and again, assuming is not something we should do, but I assumed that he was going to be very closed off and very protective and very pushy, but it was the complete opposite. He had already studied the Bible. He had studied all over the place. He was a very smart guy, and he was very curious about everything. And so that kind of opened my eyes of there are people out there that, they might be closed off, like everybody wants you to think that these people they're horrible, they're whatever. But in reality, they're just people like you and me. They want to know what you want to know. So I thought that was really cool.
So Drew or Colby, it may take both of you on this one. So we went to a church on Sunday, and remember what the guy told us about ISIS. Do you remember? Sam, can you help them out?
I have to really think about. I have to kind of. Yes.
Aaron will help them all out.
So we were talking, after church, so we went to an Arabic speaking church and sat through an Arabic service and everything. And afterwards we were talking to some of the guys there. And John, the missionary we were with, he asked one of the guys we were speaking to, he's like, what can you tell this group, us, about ISIS? And he thought about it for like a brief second. And so all of us were like, oh, buddy, like, what are we about to hear? And he goes, I won't say it was a blessing, but I'll say it was good. And we're like, it was good? And we're like, can you elaborate on that? Like, tell us more. And he basically said that it showed the Muslim people, like, this is what your religion is calling and asking you to do to your people. And it kind of changed something in their mind that said, I want nothing to do with that. I don't want to be a part of this. I don't want to have to kill people. Like, that goes against my morals and values. And it changed a lot of people's hearts and made them more open to hearing about other things. Yeah. Did I hit that on the nail?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So share with me a God story, or share with them a God story from your trip, from anyone. You got one, Sam?
Yeah. A God story for me would be, he completely changed my heart after everything, after that trip. I went in very hardened. I was very hardened toward this group of people. I wanted nothing to do with them. I thought horrible things about them. I'd heard, stories and whatever, but I'd never truly experienced another people group like this before. And it almost brought me to the tears of welcome that we got from these people, because my heart was hardened for so long. Because my entire life, and I'm sure most of y'all's entire lives, we've been at war in the Middle East, and we've been at war with these people. And in my eyes, somebody who's Muslim was the bad guy. You see in the movies, you see everywhere else, you see in the media. That's what you see. You see the guy with the the turban on his head, and you see women with the hijab, and you think those are the bad guys. In reality, they're just people. They're no different than you and me. They sin, I sin worse than them. They sin worse than me. There's nothing different between you, us, and them, except that they don't have God in their lives. They don't want God in their lives. They choose not to have him. And so they need Jesus just as much as any of y'all do in this room, just as much as I do. And so going with the perspective of almost hatred towards these people and coming out with, I have nothing but love. I want nothing but love towards these people now. And I've kind of decided that, after college and everything, I'm going to go into something in the mission field. And so that's what God did in my heart.
That's good.
I guess my God story would be him sending me there to change my point of view of Muslims. Just like Sam said, we've been dealing with them a lot longer than they've been here in the United States.
Well, they said it very well. So, God's story was, like they said, just opening our hearts, because we weren't very accepting at first of these people, but God changed our hearts to get to understand them more.
I'll give a different side real quick. So while we were there, we got to meet someone in the underground church who is a missionary over in Afghanistan. And he's been a missionary, I want to say, for 10 years over there. And we got to speak to him, and he told us like what he was doing and like just people he worked with. And he said for the first 10 years of him being a missionary in Afghanistan, he saw no fruit from what he was doing. So, he had to build relationships with people first, so then he could, I guess, quietly share the gospel and kind of keep it on the low so people didn't know. And it took him 10 years before someone came to know Christ, which is a very long time and teaches someone patience. But I was like, I just saw like the comparison. I was like, he did that over in the Middle East. Like, he has to sleep at night knowing someone could be after him for what he believes in, where we don't have to do that. We can live, we can go talk about it, we can go tell people about it freely and openly, and do we as much as we should. That's what I got. That's what I learned from him.
That's good.
God just really showed me how powerful prayer is. Like, I was praying with this one widow when we were washing the feet, and after I was done, I was praying over her, and even though we have that language barrier, she could still feel that I was praying for her, even though she didn't understand what I was saying. But she just could feel that I was praying for her, and it was just an amazing experience because I don't think I've ever prayed over anybody before that didn't know what I was saying, and it was just an amazing experience.
So when we washed the widow's feet, as soon as you would start washing their feet, they would just start sobbing. And that's just incredible to me because we weren't giving them anything when we washed their feet. The only thing that we were doing for them is showing them that God loves them and that we love them. And they felt so loved, and they even felt embarrassed. They would try to wash their own feet and dry their own feet, and we would have to tell them, no, we're going to do this for you because of how much we were honoring them. And then even whenever we were praying for them, it's so hard to know how to pray for people like that because they are just so pure in heart and so joyful. And I see God so much in them. So that was just really powerful and convicting for me.
So I'm going to bounce off a little bit off of what Aaron said. So with the language barrier and everything, being halfway across the world, my God story of what God has done in my life and in these people's life, it hasn't ended yet. These seeds that we planted, we won't get to see the fruit of them, but we'll see in this time frame that we have, we'll get to see the water that will help them grow. And so I was racking my brain trying to think I need a God story. What big thing did God do? And it brought me back to the first day we were there, and I was so frustrated because I was wow, I can't talk to these people. I just want to minister to them and love them, but I can't because I cannot understand them. They can't understand me. And so it's crazy to actually see that God is not finished yet. That I know that what I did whenever I was there had an impact on their lives just as much as it had an impact on me. And the story of what God has done isn't done yet.
Yeah. It's good. You have anything, Braylon? Okay.
So the coolest thing to me was we got there, and the rule of the road is actually the biggest car wins. And you think I'm joking, but you have these motorcycles and you have these tiny cars, and they'll move out of the way so this bus can come through. And so we rode in a bus, so we were sitting pretty good. But our driver is Hindu. It's just sad to see that these people, you have shrines for every 5 Hindu shrines. There's one Muslim mosque, and for every 10, there's one Catholic church and Catholic shrines. And it's sad because our driver was Hindu, and with a lot of these Hindus, including him, they would go like throughout the day to their Hindu shrine, but they would also go to the Muslim mosque and the Catholic church to pray and just find out which God's real and which God is actually there. And so it was just cool to see, like, here we don't really seek truth. We don't really care enough to do that. We're so self-involved and we have enough distractions to think we're good. But over there, they have phones, they have Snapchat, they have Instagram, got a couple Instas, but they are more focused on the things that matter because most of them don't have much like houses and material wealth, and so most of them try to seek out truth. And it was cool because throughout the week we were just planting seeds, we were just smiling and being joyful, and what a smile can do to somebody is incredible. At first he was kind of standoffish, but throughout the week he started coming to see like what we were doing and started helping out, and it was really cool to see.
It's good.
Can I say one more thing really quick?
Yeah.
Okay, I have another one. So, I mean, I could talk all day about what Jesus did, but so our bus driver, Braylon reminded me of this. So our bus driver was Hindu, right? He didn't have any idea what we were doing. We were just a bunch of white people crawling on this bus, and it was really cool to see that, like, normally whenever he's a bus driver, like, they have their whole caste system, right? And bus drivers are not high on that. And so whenever people hire him to drive them around, like, they ignore him and they're just like, oh, you're just a bus driver, like, who cares? But it was crazy to see, like, by the end of the week, like, he would come out of the bus and come and hang out with us and come help us serve the widows, and he'd like try to help pass out our food to serve the widows, and it was so cool to see. But like, we didn't mean to do that. We just said hi and thank you, and like, he was crawling out the bus, and it was crazy. Anyways.
That's good. So before, I'm going to close with a couple things. You guys can be seated. All right, Lucy, do you have a couple pictures up there? Did you load that PowerPoint? Okay. So you guys can have a seat. So here's how I want to close for you guys. You may be thinking, and Riley's not here, but Riley had this idea of he was going for selfish reasons. And I told him, God can use that. Come on. And so Riley ended up going. And so you may be thinking, hey, I want to go to India, or I want to go to Detroit, or I want to do missions, and it may be selfish, and God can still use that. And so, but he can also use you right here, right where you're at. And so the Detroit team, we don't have a lot of pictures because the guy we met from the underground church, there's a contract on his head. And so that's really not acceptable to post that photo. And where we were at, we couldn't hang out with the ladies. They wouldn't talk to us. They would only really talk to Megan and Aaron because it's just not part of their religion to come up and talk to a guy. And so, side note, I don't know why you would ever, as a female, convert to Muslim. I just don't quite get that, but whatever. So we met this girl, and I think she'll relate to you guys. And so Megan is not here, and if Megan was here, she would be crying and bawling right now. But for those of you, this girl is it. She is living out in Detroit, in Hamtramck, and she has taken the mission field to right where she's at. And this video, after this video, it's really, it's about 7 minutes long, but I think it will keep you intrigued. After the video is done, you guys are simply dismissed to small groups to talk about what you heard tonight, what you saw, and really what your view of missions is. So check this video out.
Joke with everyone that the Easy Bake is where my career started, because literally, like, that was my first time where I was like, oh my gosh, it's like this plastic toy where I was able to just create something, even though it was powder and water, and I was like, I made a cake. A big part of my story and what God has actually used, like he really is the God of taking ashes and turning them into beauty, you know, and my life is a testament to that. I was just going down this one path, and it was like, you know, I graduated, I was working in the industry in Chicago, and ended up through a couple of connections getting an internship in Paris, France. I was like, yeah, this is great. You know, I'm thriving in my career. I met like my pastry idol, you know, and my boyfriend came and visited me, and now we're engaged, and I was just going down this one path. You know, you're just living your life. You're trying to figure things out, you're making friends, you're partying, you're, you know, whatever, but I just felt like, hey, something isn't right here. So I actually ended up breaking it off and finding myself in an extreme place of brokenness. And that is literally, in that moment, is where Jesus found me. And he was like, for the first time, I was like, I always say that like he loved me back to life again. You know, it's what he does. And I think now, and a big part of like C-Love's story is seeing brokenness and knowing what he can do with it. At that point, I was so in love with him and like encapsulated in who he was. It's like the closer you get to him, you start viewing it as a relationship and you choose him, and like his love never changes for you. Like that is a place of like, you're laying it all down. During that time, the Syrian refugee crisis started getting pretty intense, and it was on the news a lot more. And so just through a lot of prayer and Jesus truthfully unraveling me and getting me to like discover who I really am in him, we decided to go to Greece and to just be his hands and feet. This is the food line at Moria. And so just like thousands and thousands and thousands of refugees waiting in line for food, which was catered in every day. This is the kitchen at Skala Skaminia, the first camp that we were at the first couple of weeks in Greece. We actually made meals here. Any refugees that came, we prepped things. But this pot, I remember making a lot of popcorn in. So I was in camp my entire time, but the last month I was there, they set up this community center. And so women and children specifically were able to come and have tea. There was like a laundry area. And I had this moment where I was like, man, it would be so cool, because all these women were just like sitting against the wall, like watching their kids play with a couple of toys. And I was like, I would love to do some baking, you know, with some of these women. Like, that'd be a ton of fun, but the infrastructure wasn't really in place. It was more like we were all just surviving, you know? It was like we're just there and we're serving, and it's intense and you're in it. And I think God planted that seed, you know, in that moment where I was like, oh, man, this would be so cool. Like, what a way to gather people together. And so coming back from Greece, I felt empty in a lot of ways, and also this heavy responsibility to do something. You know, I think, like I had mentioned, God started unraveling me and just was teaching me to have identity in him first, like put him first. And then you can put pastry, you know, it follows after that. And so I started dreaming up the C-Love Baking Academy during that time. En français, ici là est une conversation de mon amour, de Jésus, de la pâtisserie et des autres. C-Love Baking Academy is a fully professional pastry training school for immigrant women, and it's also just my heart and the heart that Jesus has shown me and his love for me in just really seeing women and seeing them for who they truly are. Just creating a space of welcome in the kitchen is just kind of like the top of it, but underneath there's like community and welcome and showing the love of Jesus in a really simple and cool and creative way. So you have this, and I kind of just give a little squat like that. Watching my students in the first session was so humbling. Like,
It was so surreal. Like, I don't know how to even describe it. To write the curriculum, first of all, and then see it played out live, and then see the students develop not only like with each other and like the way that they looked out for each other, but as confident women. Like, I remember by the time we got to like the pie and tart category, like over here we started like super easy with quick breads and like worked all our way, and just they were like stoked to do this like amazing fruit tart. They had like fondant decorations. They were like putting powdered sugar, and they're like, look at it, like look. They're all taking like photos on their phone. And there would be some days after class where I would just cry in my car and be like, God, thank you. Like, this is such a gift to me, you know? Because it's like you're doing not only what he's asking, but you're touching other people's lives, you know? And that is important to me.
This call to love is so powerful. If you say yes to God, whether it's in exactly where you are for the rest of until Jesus comes back, like, just keep saying yes, you know? I want to get to heaven tired and say, like, I said yes to everything you asked me to do.
Right here, it's really tough to tell, and I wish there was a way. In 18 years, you will know.